Hi there everyone, and welcome to DnD Horror Stories with DnD Doge. I understand the appeal of actual play games, and wanting to be part of that type of content creation, especially with the popularity of Critical Role. But this next Dungeon Master takes things to impossible levels and expectations from his players. To the post. Veteran Dungeon Master tries to be a Twitch star. Goes scorched earth after being called out for impossible challenge. By Reddit user Amos Cinder. My wife and I were part of a weekly Pathfinder 1st edition game ran by a dungeon master by the name of Jack, who built his world 4 decades ago and has been fleshing it out ever since. When it started, he was recording sessions to upload to YouTube for posterity. However, once Pathfinder 2nd edition came out, he wanted to switch to Twitch and livestream games. He was unemployed at the time, so he wanted to use viewer donations to help pay his utility bills and software licenses to run the game. Once we got in front of a quote-unquote live audience, his tone completely changed. We were no longer friends, just having fun. While none of the players were getting paid, we had call times to log on before each game. He expected high-quality microphones and webcams, and we always had to put on a positive face. Meanwhile, on our Discord channel, he was making threatening, blanket accusations of cheating, and saying that he could replace us anytime we disagreed with how he ran the game, and wanted to step away. He wanted to run a second campaign with new characters, but when we all voiced our desire to keep with our now high-level characters and resolve unfinished business, it was clear he became really pissed and got vindictive in-game. Every BBEG in his repertoire, including Elder Gods, were gunning for us. However, the only way we could stop the evil forces working towards our destruction was to go on a massive fetch quest for no fewer than a dozen MacGuffin orbs scattered in unknown locations across his homebrew world of over 40 different countries, kingdoms, and provinces, collectively larger than all of Tamriel. We had no idea where to go, and every time we encountered an established NPC of Jack's to gain some insight or assistance, the NPC would mock us for our ineptitude or ignorance, while offering zero helpful direction. We were just expected to explore and stumble upon these orbs, or get killed off by his overpowered encounters, so we could play in the game that he actually wanted to run. I was a 17th level wizard, so between me and the equally powerful sorcerer in the party, we were shadow walking and teleporting across the world to try to cover as much ground as possible, and hoping we would just luck into some progress. One week, our monk, Stu, needed to call out of game so he could celebrate his 20th wedding anniversary. Jack said it was fine, but that the game would go on regardless. So Jack called an end to the session right as our sorcerer finished casting teleport so that we could start the session without Stu wherever we ended up. Well, the session starts with Jack informing us that Stu's monk isn't with us and got lost somewhere during the teleportation process. We have no idea where he is, how to reach him, or how to get the party back together. But we press on, hoping that Jack will have a plan for Stu to come back next week. The next week rolls around, and Jack basically has Stu sitting there on livestream, putting the responsibility of reuniting the party entirely on us. Most of our spells don't work because of the effective ranges, and Jack is actively keeping Stu from playing to prevent us from metagaming our way into knowing where in the world he is. Finally, I get fed up and cash in one of the bonuses paid for by the audience. If you paid $10, a player could get anywhere from a -3 to a +3 bonus on a check based on a d6 roll. If you paid $20, a player could re-roll any failed d20 roll once. If you paid $50, a player could ask the Dungeon Master directly for help, soliciting advice or identifying the path of least resistance forward in the story. I was fed up and cashed in the $50 bonus and asked, how do we get back together with Stu? Jack's answer? A DC 60 Arcana check using one of the MacGuffin orbs to ride a surge of magical energy across the continent until it connects with Stu's orb. I had a plus 29 to Arcana as a level 17 wizard, and I had the highest Arcana bonus out of our remaining party, a sorcerer, a ranger, and a fighter. In Pathfinder 2nd edition, even if I rolled a 20, I'd still be more than 10 below the DC check, meaning that it was impossible for me to succeed. If I failed, I would take 100 d6 damage, and if I critically failed, I would take double damage, and the orb that we needed for the quest would shatter. The worst part was, he made every one of our characters roll for the DC 60 Arcana check. So we blew through over $400 of audience donations and rerolls, trying to mitigate the damage of our inevitable failures, just trying to avoid the crit fail. We run out of bonuses and rerolls by the time we get to my wife's turn. Her ranger critically fails, and he ends the session without resolving damage, the plan being to keep us in suspense over the damage dealt for a week. I posted in the behind-the-scenes chat on Discord that the DC 20 Arcana check felt like a punishment for Stu missing a game. Jack made the choice to geographically displace Stu with no discernible indication as to where he ended up. It shouldn't be the players' responsibility to figure out how to reunite the party after Jack deliberately separated it and sidelined a player. And the solution he gave us, that cost one of our audience members $50, was mechanically unbalanced and unfair. He then proceeded to go Chernobyl-level nuclear on the Discord, defending his experience as a dungeon master for longer than I'd been alive, popping off personal attack after personal attack against me for being a prima donna, and saying I can leave the game if I don't like how he's running things. And when I say he went nuclear, I mean he posted non-stop in the Discord for 3 days straight, from 9 AM and sometimes going until 2 in the morning. Both my wife and I informed him that we would be leaving his game immediately. He ended the campaign in the following session, and started up a new campaign with an entirely different cast shortly thereafter. The Twitch channel he used for his precious campaign setting is no longer active. Well, it just sounds to me like someone let their ego get to them, and this whole situation sounded like a clusterfuck. Now, I'm just going to go in the order that the story was told, as there's no way I can touch all that is wrong with this game, because I would be rambling for far too long. But first, say that perhaps if Jack didn't want to continue playing with the player's current characters and start a new campaign, then he should have put his foot down and said so. A dungeon master running a game that they don't want to run is a recipe for disaster, as we can see in this story. Perhaps he should have done a few more sessions to wrap up the story for the player's current characters, and then start the new campaign that he wanted to run. But with that, we get to the whole situation with Stu missing a session. Now, there could have been plenty of other ways to handle this, like just having his character stay behind for a session for reasons, and then rejoining the rest of the party afterwards, or just have one of the other players control his character for one session. Making the character get lost during teleportation with no real way to find him was not the way to go, and is what actually led to the game eventually falling apart. I mean, sure, make it a challenge to find the character, but don't make it impossible like Jack did with that super high Arcana DC. Not to mention 100 d6 damage on a failure? That is just nuts, even for high level play. Also, why not just have a side plot with Stu's character, so Stu wasn't just sitting there with nothing to contribute? Like I said, overall, this whole game just seemed like a boiling pot waiting to boil over. And OP did do the right thing by calling out that unpassable DC, and deciding that no D&D is better than bad D&D, or Pathfinder in this case. So hopefully, OP and the rest of the players were eventually able to find some new games to play in. Now, I know a lot of people might say that having audience donations help the party was a bad move, in which it did seem like Jack did possibly make things more hard for the players on purpose to elicit more donations. But overall, I gotta say, That is an interesting way to engage with the audience and have them slightly affect the game. And in the end, most content creators are trying to make a living, so I can't really hate the game there. And speaking of donations, if you would like to donate to this fine program, I'll have my Ko-fi and Ko-fi links in the description. And if you leave a message, I'll make sure to read it in the video. Now, it won't mean that I'll get any advantage in my own D&D campaign, but it does help with the kitty treats. Speaking of which, here is Boris to try to get you all to like this video and subscribe. He sure is a crazy little kitty. Though, with all that said, let's continue our D&D horror story adventures with a story about one of a Dungeons & Dragons player's worst BBEGs, cancellations. To the post. My Dungeons & Dragons campaign just ended, and I'm feeling weird about it. Is this normal? By Reddit user, The Lakes Folklore. Hey y'all. Back in January, I found a post in a city-specific subreddit where someone was looking to start a D&D campaign. Not a D&D subreddit, just a general local one. Anyway, the poster was going to be the DM, and I reached out to join. The group ended up being a mix of 4 people who live in the same city, including me and the DM, plus one person from out of state, so we played on Discord. A couple of months in, the Dungeon Master invited another player to join. This new player was his friend, which kind of surprised me since he didn't mention adding anyone. But I didn't mind. I figured more people, cool. Then, not long after that, one of the original players got kicked out. He wasn't a friend of the DM, just another person from the city. During one of the sessions, his character disagreed with the group's plan, and things got a little tense in character. The DM told him to calm down, but I didn't think that it was a huge deal. But then, the next week, the DM just posted in Discord that he had removed that player. No real explanation, no discussion, just gone. I still have no idea what happened behind the scenes, but it felt really abrupt and uncomfortable. Then, starting in May, the Dungeon Master began canceling sessions. That's totally understandable, since everyone has lives and things come up. But what bothered me was how last minute the cancellations were. He would usually cancel either an hour before we were supposed to start, or even after the start time. There was one weekend where he canceled to go on a trip with his wife, which is fine, but then asked to reschedule for the following Saturday. When that day came, he canceled again last minute. This started to become a pattern. He would have something else to do and just say that we would play next week, but it was always super short notice. Last Saturday, we were supposed to have a session. Only me and one other player showed up, the only other player who wasn't part of the DM's friend group. The 2 players who were friends with the DM didn't show. One completely ghosted, and the other one messaged later, saying they forgot and were at an art festival. So the DM said we'd cancel that night and try again the next Saturday. Well, today is that Saturday. Around 1 PM, the DM messaged the group to say that he's canceling the whole campaign because he doesn't want to DM anymore. He said he's been thinking about quitting for weeks, which kind of made me feel worse, because why not just say something earlier? Why reschedule last week to today if he already knew he did not want to keep going? I totally get that people can change their minds. DMing is a lot of work, and it's supposed to be fun, not a job. But it really threw me off that he didn't say anything until the day of. 2 weekends in a row, my plans got messed up last minute. It just made me feel like my time was not respected, and I was kind of the odd one out from the friend group. Is this kind of thing normal in Dungeons & Dragons? Or did I just end up in a weird group? Well, that really sucks to hear, as it sounded like OP was really into the game, only for it to get cancelled a bunch of times, eventually leading to it being cancelled indefinitely. Unfortunately, This does happen with Dungeons & Dragons groups sometimes, though the whole cancel last minute thing does really suck, because while sure, you can fill that time with something else, but OP was expecting to play some Dungeons & Dragons, and it does feel bad when a game that's planned doesn't happen. Heck, even with my group, which I would consider to be stable as we've been going on for over 5 years now, there are some last-minute cancellations, which, if I'm being honest, some of the cancellations did kinda piss me off. But hey, you're going to get that sometimes when playing Dungeons & Dragons as adults, and the best you can hope for is a semi-stable group that actually communicates with each other. And hopefully, OP has since found a group like that. Though, it looks like we have time for one more story, and this one is on the longer side, about a player that wants to make the games all about himself, while being drunk as a skunk in the process. To the post. My player thinks he's the main character. Kicking him could ruin 2 campaigns. By Reddit user, PrettyPractice707. I, 25-year-old female, have been running my Curse of Strahd game for a little shy of a year now, and one of the players in it is an absolute nightmare. This all started a year ago when one of my groups fell apart due to unavailability and a bit of a mismatch with the campaign I wanted to run, which was Curse of Strahd. I mean, that's fair. They didn't have the time to play a full-length campaign, and I did not want to run one-shots. It happens. This led to the creation of a new group, one that runs online due to people living on multiple continents. Don't ask me how it works, but it works. One of the members of this group, let's call him Kevin, was invited by one of my friends. I didn't know Kevin very well at this point, but he seemed to be alright, and he was really invested in the game. So I was like, alright, let's give it a go. You see, the thing is, Kevin has a bit of a massive ego. He thinks he is a public figure because he streams for his 4 viewers, and he has this incessant need to one-up everyone. He feels the need to constantly take the spotlight from the other players, which is something we have talked to him about on multiple occasions. He is very loud and gets very drunk during sessions, and the more drunk he gets, the more insufferable he becomes. As is mostly the case when one person is getting drunk while no one else is. I very clearly stated in Session 0 that drinking is okay, but I will not tolerate disruptive behavior, as this was one of the issues with another group I played in once, so I wanted to avoid this at all cost. He thinks he is the only reason why people roleplay in the campaign, yet he refuses to give space for anyone to talk, and he loves the sound of his own voice. I think we can all say that we've had experiences with people like this. Kevin also plays in my friend's campaign, and he's recently started running his own campaign, which he very clearly thinks is the best thing since sliced bread. He has been running his own game, so he has felt the need to constantly backseat DM me, despite just being objectively wrong. Most recently, he told me that the way that I use legendary actions is wrong, which it's not, and when he realized he was wrong, he got very pouty and upset. Whenever I'm speaking, he will constantly interrupt me, even if I ask him to shut up and wait for 2 minutes. He simply cannot do it. He constantly wants me to modify my game to his needs, because he picked a bad class, and he doesn't know how to deal with it. Now, I don't do this for anyone else, by the way, but he thinks he deserves to have everything tailored to his needs, so I am happy to let him play a different character. But I'm not going to modify the core game mechanics because this man-child doesn't want to play by the rules that I run my game with, which is a mix of 5th edition and 5.5e in some cases. Most recently, we were running our 11th session, which started out with the party getting attacked during their long rest. Kevin's character got charmed and was unable to fight. This was a consequence for him wandering off, despite taking the first watch and leaving the party vulnerable to attack. There were other things going on as well, But that is kind of the sum of it. Kevin did not like this. He kept interrupting me, asking me questions about why he was charmed mid-sentence, while I was just trying to set the scene. I explained how it works like 3 times, and he refused to accept it. I told him to wait for me to finish speaking a few times. Then, when the fight was over, he proceeded to rant in character to the other characters for roughly 20 minutes. Mind you, he was very, very drunk at this point. I think he joined the session drunk, as we started 40 minutes late because another player was stuck in traffic. But he just kept drinking. Anyways, finally, my paladin player had enough of his bullshit and proceeded to tell him to shut up and stop taking the spotlight, since 3 other characters were trying to say things and nobody could get a single word in. Kevin proceeded to argue with her before going completely silent for the rest of the game, stating, "He is dealing with a personal issue." He said that he was going to quit playing, but he was still going to hang around in voice chat. So he basically listened in on all of what we were doing for the entire game, whilst not saying a single word, and told me to take over his character, which I did, so we could keep playing. The game lasted another 3.5 hours, and by the end of it, he was still there listening in on us, despite pretending not to be there. When we left the voice chat, he suddenly left as well. Now, I don't know if there's truly something going on with him, but it's no excuse to get excessively drunk and ruin the vibe for 5 other people. Kevin has also done some pretty creepy stuff in relation to the other campaigns that we're playing in. One of the things being that he argued with me and my significant other of 3+ years for roughly about an hour if it's okay to pursue in-game relationships with other players, mainly my character. Also, what the fuck? We told him no several times, and eventually he left the voice call, yet came back 30 minutes later for round 2. All the while, me, my significant other, and the dungeon master for that game were like, "What the fuck, dude?" Our running theory right now is that he can't handle being friend-zoned and is taking it out on me personally. I recently graduated uni and came back from vacation, and I pulled 10 hours plus of session prep so we could start playing as soon as possible. I was really looking forward to this session as well, because I finally would be able to give 2 other player characters more of a spotlight, since their character stories lined up perfectly with the stuff that is going on in game. I know the best course of action is to boot this idiot from my games, but one of his friends plays in my campaign as well, and if they were to leave, I would be down 2 players, and my friend would have to halt her campaign because both of them play in her campaign as well, and we would only have 2 players left. His friend is completely fine and respectful, and is actually one of the people he refuses to make space for. It seems that no matter what I decide, there will be drama. Well, that certainly sounds like a bad position to be in as a dungeon master. One problem player that brings the game down, but if you kick him, there is a chance that his friends will follow. But in the end, all that matters is if you're having fun with the game, whether you're playing in it or running it. So the best bet here would be to roll the dice, and boot him from your game if he is causing that much of a headache. Though OP did post an update to this whole ordeal. So let's find out what happened. Update. I've spoken to the dungeon master of the other group, who is also the paladin player. I should have clarified that. They, in turn, spoke to Kevin, who was very apologetic to them. He basically told them that he gets carried away while playing his character, and that his character is not good for his mental health. He told them he made some sort of self-insert trauma dump character. I was not aware of this. Well, that is never a healthy thing to do. Plus, it's not fair to the other players to make a character as a form of personal therapy. If you feel like you need to talk things out, the best bet is to seek out professional help. Don't make Dungeons & Dragons a surrogate for your personal crap. They said they'd be willing to give him another chance by killing his character and letting him start fresh with a less problematic character. But I denied this because I don't believe he is capable of change, especially not in such a short time. I want to see change now, and the only way to achieve that is to not have him around. I also feel that this campaign is not for him, since it can get very heavy at times, and he's told me on a few occasions that he doesn't like combat-heavy D&D, so I don't know why he so desperately wanted to play it. Kevin has made it so that I don't enjoy DMing my own game anymore. I don't trust him to put in the effort to change, especially after we asked him several times and nothing happened. It's not fair to everyone to let him stay, and he told them that he'd be sad about leaving, but that it might be better. I had a talk with most of my players about the situation, and they mostly agreed with me booting him. I haven't had the chance to speak to Kevin or his friend personally, but I'm pretty sure he knows that he's done. While I do feel sorry for him, this is my Ravenloft game, and not his therapy session. Well, at least it sounds like things are semi-working out. It is good that OP was able to kick Kevin out without too much drama, and I didn't hear her saying that his friend left because he was kicked. Though seriously, please do not use Dungeons & Dragons as therapy. Sure, it can be a great escape from reality for a bit, but to basically make a self-insert character to try and deal with some personal issues in-game is not healthy, and that type of thing should be handled by a professional, which honestly, it sounds like Kevin needed, as he would always be drunk for sessions. So, in the end, at least Kevin was able to stay in one campaign by just changing characters, and OP doesn't have to deal with someone that she doesn't want to deal with. So all around, a kinda happy ending? I just hope that Kevin gets the proper help that it sounds like he needs. And who knows, maybe sometime down the line, OP will allow Kevin to be in another one of her games. But that is all I have for you today. As always, I really do appreciate all of you, especially if you like the video. And I hope that your games remain horror story free. Until next time.